Hey, welcome to Half the Battle.
As promised, today we'll be taking a look at the vehicle CoverGirl came with. So meet the Wolverine. This vehicle was released in 1983 with all original parts. And straight off the bat, I gotta say, this thing looks great. I mean, it looks awesome.
Which means this is gonna be a difficult review for me to do.
I mean, when I talk about something that's bad, the jokes just come on a silver or neon orange platter. Those reviews sorta just write themselves. Here though, I gotta work to make things funny and interesting. I'm of course happy to do that, since a good toy deserves a good review.
But where to start?
Well, I suppose I should begin by saying why I think it looks awesome. For one thing, it's very realistic looking, even though it's not a real military vehicle.
Well, it's sorta based on one, but we'll get to that later.
The color scheme certainly helps with a realistic look, olive drab and gray. And it continues the design choice of the first vehicles from 1982, sober military colors. I really like the aesthetic Hasbro went for in the early line. The Wolverine could have easily been part of the very first batch of vehicles without looking out of place.
For another thing, there's a great amount of detailing on this vehicle.
You've got engine parts, tents, plating, and a huge amount of molded detail on the missile launcher.
Ah yes, the missile launcher.
This is of course the main feature of the Wolverine. It can move up and down as well as side to side, so it has a full range of motion. It's divided into a left and right part with 6 missiles in each launcher, giving it a whopping 12 in total. That's a lot of firepower!
And it looks awesome!
Now, normally, this would also be where I point out the downside of this. As having 12 missiles means you have 12 things to lose, making it hard to find a Wolverine with a full set. And sure, if you don't keep them in the launchers, that still holds true.
But look at this!
The missiles fit very snugly inside the launcher. It's like impossible to lose them that way.
Unlike, say, the launchers on a whale, don't get me wrong, that's a great vehicle too.
You can safely store them in the toy itself. It's such a little thing, but I'm really impressed by that.
Now, to be fair, there are a few other things that can get lost or damaged.
There's 4 wheels, the tank tracks are non-functional, that can break or go missing, and there's a hatch on the front where the same can happen. In fact, I tried to get the hatch off to show you what's underneath, but I stopped because I was afraid of breaking it.
And speaking of breaking, there's one more thing that I have to show you online footage of because I don't have it.
Namely the very, very fragile tow cable that came with the toy. Yeah, it breaks very easily, and so it's usually missing when you find the Wolverine on the secondary market. Fortunately, the vehicle doesn't really need it to look complete. It's still awesome without it. Hell, I bet most people wouldn't even know the thing came with the tow cable. One last thing to note is that although this is an armored vehicle, the driver's head is exposed when they're sitting inside it. That seems like a small yet crucial design flaw.
Though we know that with G.I.Joe vehicles, it could get much worse.
Pictured much worse. And that was the Wolverine. Yeah, a great frickin' vehicle. I don't know how many times I've used the word awesome in this review, but have another one.
It's awesome!
It's also the only toy the Wolverine got in the original line. In fact, it hasn't been remade for any modern line either, which I feel is a real oversight on Hasbro's part. We've got like 20 new Hiss tanks, and don't get me wrong, that's still my favorite vehicle, so thanks Hasbro, but 0 new Wolverines?
For shame!
And don't tell me it's because of the name. They can call it something else. God knows they've done that often enough. Hi there, General Tomahawk. But just because this was the only Wolverine Hasbro made, that doesn't mean we're quite done with toys, since there is another version out there.
Europe, and more specifically the UK, got another version.
So meet the Action Force SAS Wolverine. This vehicle was released in, I'm gonna say 1984, with no original parts, by the Palitoy Toy Company.
Yeah, the exact time this line was released is murky at best.
Some sites claim 1982, which would be impossible since the toy mold didn't exist yet. Some say 1983 when Hasbro themselves were using the mold, so the earliest it could be is 1984, the year Joepedia lists for it. Of course, I try to do my own research, something that's hampered a bit even when you search using exact phrasings like Palitoy Action Force SAS Wolverine.
Because when you search online, guess what comes up the most?
Yeah, frickin' Logan, of course. So I changed tactics and searched for Action Force toy catalogs. where they did list this version of the Wolverine as being available for Christmas 1984. So, it's definitely a 1984 toy.
God, I hope somebody besides me cares about this crap.
As an aside, for anybody not familiar, Palitoy had their own unique line of toys called Action Force. At some point, they made a deal with Hasbro to use G.I.Joe molds for that line, repainting and renaming them. But eventually, they just straight up used G.I.Joe characters and colors, but still called it Action Force. That explains why this Wolverine is black and grey. It was part of the SAS subteam and had its own unique driver called Hunter. No, not that one. This figure. Yeah, that's a Cobra officer, but he's one of the good guys here. Pretty cool. Oh, and he's supposed to have an SAS logo on his chest, but these were the most easily rubbed off paint decals ever created, so good luck finding a mint one.
Anyway, there isn't that much to say about the Action Force toy that I haven't already said about the original.
It has different colors. Not worse colors, not better colors, just different. They're both cool. I will note that this one is also missing the tow cable, because of course it is.
Oh, and I did have one problem with both, but it's a self-inflicted one.
They have great detailing, but this means that if you let them get dusty, they are a pain in the ass to clean. We're talking cotton swabs and lots of patience here. I did the best I could. Oh, and I can show you the engine on this one, as the cover is much looser here.
For completeness sake, there are two more things to say about the Wolverine toy.
There was another Action Force one in green that came with a rock and roll figure, but the character was named Ton Up, because like I mentioned, Palitoy was doing their own thing. And in the US, the entire mold, except the rocket launcher, was reused to make the Slaughter's Marauders Lynx. But I'm saving that one for a later video.
I will say that mine is missing the tow cable, because of course it is.
And those were the Wolverines.
Wolverines!
Two fantastic toys. If I had to pick a favorite, it would be the original, if only because it had a lot more lore behind it that I'm familiar with, having never read the Action Force comics.
That means it's time to talk about the character, starting with the box.
Its full name is the Armored Missile Vehicle Wolverine, which is a name I can't fault for accuracy. Well, except the Wolverine part. I never got that. With the Marvel character, I can sorta see it since he has claws, but I don't think Wolverines have missile launchers.
If they do, humanity is in serious trouble.
I suppose it's because the animal is a lot stronger and more ferocious than it looks, but I think this tank looks just about as strong as it is. Anyway, the back of the box says it's based on a top-secret US weapon system.
And that's sorta true.
The Wolverine is kinda based on the M50 Antos anti-tank vehicle that was developed in the 50s. That thing had guns on it though, not a rocket launcher. The only other thing I want to say about the box is that this is the only place you're likely to actually see that damn tow cable.
No, I'm not bitter.
As far as other media go, well, I've already said most of that in my CoverGirl review. In the comics, it made a strong debut in issue 16, showing off just how badass it was. But it didn't really play a starring role later, though it showed up during big battles, of course. One thing I did like about the debut is that it answered a question I've asked a few times when reviewing missile launcher toys.
What's the operator supposed to do after the missiles run out? Just sit there on the battlefield?
Well, the comic provides the answer by having other Joes reload the Wolverine during the fight. Not sure where they pulled those rockets from, but hey, at least the comic offers a solution. In the cartoon, I'd say it showed up about as much as CoverGirl, though sometimes driven by different people. That's because most of the vehicles in the cartoon weren't unique. You saw multiples of them if any battle needed them.
Finally, I want to talk briefly about CoverGirl as the driver of the Wolverine, since I didn't really get into that with her review.
There's a nice contrast there, sort of a Beauty and the Beast thing, with having a model drive a freaking rocket-launching tank. It sorta reminds me of Dominion Tank Police, making her a modern Valkyrie. And that wraps it up for the Wolverine. A great toy, a great tank, basically something everybody should have in their collection.
Well, I'll see you next time, everybody, and hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing?